joining us from Sports Illustrated, getting set for the NBA draft and its coverage and all the intrigue surrounding it on the Mercedes-Benz Vans phone line. None other than Chris Mannix back here in the program. How you doing, Chris?
What's happening, Rich?
Are you in Brooklyn yet? Have you made it? You going?
No, I don't get a lot of value out of being at the draft. It's just better to kind of work from home and you work the phones, do things that way.
All right, so let's get into it. How do you think it plays out tomorrow night? What's your best guess right now?
Well, it sure seems like Jabari Smith is trending towards the top of the draft. And after that, I don't know. It's anybody's guess. I was talking to an executive this week who felt like there was a lot of fluidity, not just in the top 3 or 4 picks, but top 8 picks, really. So this could be one of those drafts we look back on 4 or 5 years later and say, hey, the 7th pick could turn out to be the best player in this draft. At least that's how it's viewed by a few of the decision makers across the league.
So who is that player? Who do you think that player could wind up being?
I don't know. There's a lot of intrigue around Chet Holmgren right now. I don't think he goes inside the top 3. Could be wrong. I mean, I've been more locked in the finals and free agency and things like that than the draft. But Chet is the guy that I think could wind up in that 4 to 7 range. And if he develops the kind of strength you need to have to play at the NBA level, he's got premier defensive instincts. He looks like he's going to be a good 3-point shooter. He's got all the physical, or at least all the tools, the skills to be a great NBA player. Physically, how his body develops is the question. And if he's going to play a lot of 5, some of the 4, he's going to have to need to develop the strength to keep those bigger players off the glass.
So, Chris Mannix here on the Rich Eisen Show. So in advance of the draft, what is happening outside of the draft world that can affect the draft? Positioning, players being traded, things of that nature. What are you hearing about?
Well, there's a lot of, jockeying of teams trying to move up, and, teams with multiple draft picks are the ones you really want to keep an eye on. Oklahoma City, for one, they've got several picks in that first round, and quite frankly, the Thunder don't have the roster spots for them at this point. I mean, they'll keep the number 2 overall pick in the draft because they need another franchise player to, play opposite Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Lou Dort, Josh Giddey, a really nice core they have in Oklahoma City right now. If they hit on this number 2 overall pick, they'll be in a great position moving forward. So they're probably the team I'm watching most right now because of the number of picks they have in the first round.
And our colleague at the Worldwide Leader, Woj, said today that if you're a general manager and you haven't heard from Daryl Morey asking for a player on your roster being offered Tybal in the 23rd overall pick in the draft in return, then you don't have your phone on. What do you think Daryl Morey's up to? What do you think?
Well, he's trying to create some financial flexibility on that roster. Whether that's to try to make a run at a guy like P.J. Tucker or somebody else, it's not entirely clear at this moment, but he is trying to create financial flexibility. They're going to be a very expensive team over the next couple of years, and even with James Harden back, that team obviously needs something. And a guy like P.J. Tucker, who, by the way, is, I think, still a strong favorite to go back to Miami and will have a handful of other suitors, including Brooklyn, that'll be recruiting him hard over the next few weeks. He would look pretty good playing opposite Joel Embiid in that front court or backing him up in some spots. So that, I think, is one of the top targets of Philadelphia and why they're trying to clear some cap space and create some flexibility.
No, I know NBA Twitter is having their fun of the age of P.J. Tucker, but, I mean, you just take a look at championship teams over the last few years or teams that have aspirations of championships over the last few years, and P.J. Tucker's on it. I mean, the guy's a winner, and he does everything.
He's sort of a modern day, and he's kind of developed. He wasn't really a modern day big when he started in the NBA,
right?
But he's really developed into that over the last few years, where he can play multiple positions. He's really, really developed that corner 3, which is critical when you're playing driving kick in today's league. So he's mastered the things you need to master to have longevity in the NBA. And you mentioned kind of the experience he's had, playing for Milwaukee, playing for Miami, winning a championship, showing the kind of toughness defensively against Kevin Durant in the playoffs. He's as valuable a role player as you're going to get. So as I said, the market, if PJ decides to explore it, from what I've heard, he's very happy in Miami, and financially, there's a reason for him to opt out of that contract because he can get a bigger one with Miami if he just by opting out. So this may just be procedural for PJ Tucker. But if he looks elsewhere, the market will be pretty strong.
And then just, with Miami, Chris Mannix, Riley, you just know I think he's itching to make a big move or be part of whatever next big move can be made, that the team is close. And I'm just wondering what the big move could be made, not just by Miami, but just by anybody right now. Whether it's tomorrow night or next week in advance of the new league year in free agency. Like, what is afoot on that front, Chris?
Well, most of the teams that I've talked to, at least the ones that are looking to do something along those lines, are monitoring Bradley Beal the closest. Now, Beal said recently at an event he's made a decision about his Wizards' future. He has not yet revealed what that is. Washington has been operating with an expectation that he is going to re-sign a max contract there. But, Beal is the kind of guy that Miami has craved for years. Philadelphia is another team that's been hot after Beal for a long time. Boston has had a lot of interest in Bradley Beal. You can bet a team like Golden State is very interested in Beal and has the young assets potentially to offer the Wizards in a situation like that. So you're really looking at him as being one of the true kind of team movers or landscape-altering kind of deals that could potentially be out there. For Miami, though, as well, I think Miami is a probable landing spot for John Wall if he gets bought out and when he gets bought out of this contract. Wall, of course, hasn't played in a calendar year, but, given how Kyle Lowry looked banged up last year and, has looked a little bit older at this stage, having a player like John Wall who could step in either in a backup role or a complementary role, I think would be valuable and enhance Miami as well.
Chris Mannix of Sports Illustrated here on the Rich Eisen Show in advance of the NBA draft in Brooklyn, New York on Thursday night. So speaking of Brooklyn, you're a host of the NBA draft. What is the latest on Kyrie and their maneuverings, do you think?
Well, it's going to come down to what kind of contract Kyrie can swallow and what kind of contract the Nets can swallow. It's really as simple as that. I mean, my read of the latest round of reporting is that it's Kyrie's way of seeking leverage. It's pretty obvious that's the case. There's no upside for the Nets to kind of leak something like that out there. There's all upside for Kyrie to make it seem like there's a market for him, when the reality is there really isn't, not unless he's willing to take a significant pay cut, in the neighborhood of $26 million per year to play somewhere else, like whether it's the Lakers, the Clippers, or another franchise. He's not going to Indiana. He's not going to Portland. He's probably not going to San Antonio. So this was about creating leverage for Kyrie. And, I wrote about this a little bit this week. And, as expected as this moment was where Kyrie and the Nets reach something of an impasse in contract talks, to me, so too is the resolution where Kyrie and the Nets figure something out, because both sides need each other. I mean, Kyrie needs the Nets for a big contract, a chance to play with Kevin Durant, and a chance to win. The Nets need Kyrie to have any chance of competing at the highest level and to keep Kevin Durant happy, because if Kyrie walks, Kevin Durant's going to be looking around going, all right, I've got Ben Simmons, I've got Joe Harris, I've got Seth Curry. Is that enough to win me a championship in the twilight of my career? He's 34 years old at this point. He's probably got 2 or 3 more elite years left in him. You've got to keep Kevin Durant happy at this stage. So my feeling all along is that these two sides would come to some kind of agreement where it's not quite a max contract, which is a win for Brooklyn, and it's not a massive haircut, which would be a win for Kyrie.
And in the most Los Angeles moment in the near 8-year history of my show, Chris Mannix, I had Darvin Ham call in, even though he was a 2-minute walk away from the studio. And he is all in publicly on Westbrook. He had dinner with Westbrook. He's talking. You know, Westbrook was there at the press conference when he was talking up Westbrook, that Westbrook is going to absolutely sacrifice and play defense, because that's what Darvin Ham is bringing to the Los Angeles Lakers. And I even said to the coach, like, you know, a lot of people are saying good luck with that. And he couldn't be more positive, and I loved talking to him, but I'm sitting here in the good luck with that category. I wonder what you think the Lakers are thinking deep down as they get set for this draft night.
Well, they're hoping that Darvin Ham is right and that Russell Westbrook is more than just talk at this point, because they don't have a choice in bringing Westbrook back. There is no market for him whatsoever if you're not going to attach draft capital to him, and the Lakers have been unwilling to do that when teams have called to discuss that. So, you know, this is where they're at this point. Now, I'm a little bit bemused by the idea that Westbrook's now willing to sacrifice and change. And, you know, I know Westbrook was frustrated by his relationship with Frank Vogel, which also bemused me, since, I mean, Vogel played Westbrook 81 games. Mm-hmm. He started him in every game. He played him 33-plus minutes per game. The idea that Frank Vogel didn't believe in Russell Westbrook is not supported by facts or supported by evidence. And look, I love Darvin Ham. I came on your show and told you it was a home run for the Lakers. But the idea that Russell Westbrook is going to be an elite point-of-attack defender, again, doesn't line up with the facts. The last time Russell Westbrook was an elite defender, I think, was in college, when he was, the Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year at one point. In the pros, he's been athletic and he's collected steals, but being that doesn't make you a great defender, you know, in this league. So I don't know how in his mid-30s, Westbrook's going to become this key to a Lakers defense. It just doesn't fit who he is at this stage. And look, all last year, you know, Frank Vogel and the Lakers coaching staff talked to Russell Westbrook about the importance in the offseason of developing into a shooter, because that's what's going to carry Westbrook into the latter stages of his career. It's going to keep him in the league, quite frankly, in the latter stages of his career. And for what I was told, those comments that advice fell on deaf ears with Westbrook. Now, maybe Darvin Ham has a stronger relationship. Maybe he's been able to get through to him. Maybe Westbrook at this, you know, in weeks and months after the season has had something of an epiphany. But, Rich, if Westbrook doesn't come in a significantly better shooter, I'm not sure how you do that in one offseason, but if he doesn't come in a significantly better shooter, the Lakers are going to be right back where they started with Westbrook being a player who can give you some highlight reel moments during the season, but in the totality of it, not be a net positive for you.
Well, put your NBC Sports Boston hat on for a minute, Chris Mannix. What is the postmortem for the Eastern Conference champs after coming 2 wins shy of the whole enchilada?
It's that everything's fine out there. I mean, I keep seeing some talk about replacing Marcus Smart because you need a lead ball handler. That's ridiculous. Marcus Smart is the defensive player of the year, and this team is in the finals not because of their offensive fluidity, but because they were the best team in the NBA defensively by a country mile. And that had a lot to do with Marcus Smart. You don't need to shake up Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. You know, they just went up against a more experienced team that was just a little bit better and a little bit more confident in what they could do in that type of situation in the finals. If they had gone up against, say, you know, Phoenix, I think they would have beaten Phoenix. If they had gone up against Memphis or Dallas or any of those other teams that were in the Western Conference playoffs, I think they would have beaten those teams. Golden State, the core of that team with Curry, Thompson, and Draymond were just too refined for that type of moment. They were too prepared for that type of moment. The Celtics looked like a team in their first finals. They threw the ball away. Jason Tatum, more turnovers than anybody in playoff history in that postseason. These are all things that get better with time and with maturity. And I think the Celtics have as much chance of organic growth than maybe any team in the league right now. I mean, you look at that team. Tatum is coming back better. He'll be 25 next year. Jaylen Brown, 26. He'll be better. Off the bench, Peyton Pritchard, Grant Williams, Robert Williams, when he's not dragging you around his knee, is going to be better. They do need to add something to that mix, preferably kind of a 6'6 to 6'9 perimeter player who can defend, make open jump shots. Those guys aren't everywhere. I understand that, but they need to find that somewhere. But if they do, they'll come back next year 9 or 10 players deep and be every bit as good, if not better, than what they were this year. And they'll still be an elite defensive team. So I think the Celtics are in great position without making any substantial moves to be right back in the finals next year.
And what's the sense of the Warriors? Because they did this without James Wiseman playing a single minute, and he was the first overall selection from a couple of years ago. Jordan Poole has just ascended. Andrew Wiggins looked the way that he looked, and the sense is Clay's going to be healthier, and Curry is like that fine wine. Could we be seeing another dynastic run for this team, do you think?
Yeah, we might. We might at this point, because we're now kind of past the point of the Warriors kind of dangling some of their young pieces for another star. I mean, I mentioned Bradley Beal. I guess that's certainly possible, but I don't even know if you do that if you're the Warriors right now, because in order to make a deal like that happen, you needed to include a big salary. Well, that big salary is Andrew Wiggins, and you're certainly not trading him at this point. Andrew Wiggins, at 27 years old, is now part of that team's core, and a very big one when you consider he's now a 40-ish% three-point shooter who defends everybody. He had a great series, multiple series, really. Played really well against Luka Doncic and then shut down Jason Tatum in the finals. He is a part of that core. And, you know, Wiseman, what he can add will be great. He'll be kind of an heir to Kevon Looney, I think, with that team. You saw last year, Jonathan Kuminga showed he could play.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't play in the postseason, but he's going to be ready, I think, next year.
Chris, they have Moody sitting down. They have Moody on the bench, too, and they have a general manager who's brilliant and owners who don't care about the luxury tax. They don't care.
And by the way, Rich, I see that a lot about the Warriors, are willing to spend. Every NBA owner is willing to spend. Your team is worth like $3 billion at this point. You're not willing to spend,
right.
Just sell and get out, and make a nice profit off of it. So, but the Warriors, with the Chase Center, and I think they're getting like $50 million a year from the patch on their jersey at this point. I mean, they're just printing money over there. So they're in a great position. Like, they've basically got like the Oklahoma City Thunder on their bench, right? They've got 3 lottery picks, including the former number 2 pick in Wiseman, just sitting there on the bench. So they're going to be in a great position to kind of allow the stars on this team to have a more relaxed regular season, play like 30-ish minutes per game, go into the playoffs fresh with a rotation that's 9 or 10 guys deep of guys that can all play. So, Golden State was telling everybody afterwards, we'll be back next year.
Oh, yeah.
We know what we are. We know what we've got. And I see no reason to not believe that. That is a great team potentially for the next 3 or 4 years.
And I'm just glad that Clay came through it healthy, not just with the minutes played, but also tripping over that rut in the street for the cable car.
I will never criticize athletes for getting drunk at parades. I love it.
Well, me too.
Keep at it.
Me too.
Have as many drinks as you can.
Chris, enjoy the draft. Look for my call as free agency hits. Thanks again, as always, for your time.
Rich.
Right back at you. Thank you so much. At SI Chris Mannix, I follow him. You should as well, right here on the Rich Eisen Show.